Carved downward into an Afghan hilltop lies Takht-e Rostam, the throne of Rostam. Officially, it's a 1,500-year-old Buddhist stupa. But why does this sacred site look like a modern fortified bunker?
This one is being carved in the rock down the ground. And you can go around, and it's amazing because there are caves where the monks were living.
Unlike any other temple, it forms a massive, perfect circular pit, 8 meters deep, as if dug from the bedrock with a giant ice cream scooper. To enter, you descend into the earth.
This is an incredible rabbit warren. This whole mountain is just full of tunnels, and they all lead to little chambers which monks would have lived in or prayed in, and they all congregate around the Buddha here.
Why would ancient monks build a place of peace, like a secret subterranean stronghold? The official story is crumbling.
Oh my God. This is a full skeleton. Look at this. We have a full skeleton here.
Mm-hmm. But there are the skeletons. There's another one up there.
Oh, there's another skeleton right there.
The anomaly in the stone. Historians and maps have labeled this place Takht-e Rostam, a Buddhist monastery and holy site dating back to the 4th or 5th century. They call it a stupa, a dome-shaped shrine for meditation and prayer.
Where the monks were living, and they were spending their life in prayer and meditation.
It's a tidy, accepted fact, a box neatly checked on the archaeological record. But this story begins to unravel the moment you lay eyes on the place. Takht-e Rostam is not like any other Buddhist site on Earth. It defies the very logic of how such places were built. Across Asia, from India to Tibet, stupas are acts of addition. They are built upwards, towards the heavens. Stone is piled upon stone, creating grand, ornate structures designed to be seen from miles away, guiding travelers and inspiring the faithful. They reach for the divine. This place is the exact opposite.
This is brilliant. This was an underground sort of cave bazaar. They used to sell the goods in here.
Takht-e Rostam is an act of subtraction. It is not a structure built upon the hill. It is a breathtakingly precise void carved directly into it. Imagine a giant ice cream scooper excavating a perfect, massive bowl from the solid rock of the hilltop. This is a monolithic carving. Builders didn't assemble it, they carved it. They removed thousands of tons of stone to create an 8-meter deep circular trench, deeper than a 2-story building, leaving a stunningly perfect solid stone dome standing alone in the center. To enter this sacred space, you do not climb a staircase towards the sky. You descend into the earth. The feeling is not one of openness and inspiration, but of entering a hidden, fortified, and deeply enigmatic space. This reality forces a single, burning question. Why? Why would anyone choose this immensely more difficult path? Why dig down into unforgiving bedrock when building up would be infinitely faster and easier? This anomaly in the stone doesn't just challenge what we see. It challenges the very story we've been told. To understand the possibility of its true purpose, we must first forget what we think we know and look at what's actually there.
They carve this place with your hand, and it is so amazing. You know, when I see this place in the first time, I got amazed. Wow.
The throne of a hero. As Buddhism faded from the region after the Kushan era and the rise of Islam, the monks and their sunken temple slipped from living memory. The site stood quiet on a windswept hill, a vast, strange stone puzzle with no obvious maker. The people living nearby did not recall monks or foreign gods. They only saw a huge, mysterious monument that needed an explanation rooted in their own world. So they reached for their own stories. Over time, the ruins were woven into local legend and given a new name, Takht-e Rostam, meaning the throne of Rostam. Rostam is a towering figure in Persian epic tales, a hero whose legend felt like a fitting home for such an imposing place. The name and the tales offered a clear and meaningful way for people to understand the ruins, not as a Buddhist shrine, but as part of their own heroic past. This change is more than a renaming. It shows how communities rewrite the past to fit their culture and memory. Physical remains rarely come with neat labels. When the original builders and beliefs vanish, the living invent stories that make sense to them. The square base on the dome, once part of a Buddhist harmika, became a royal basin in the local imagination. Features were repurposed into the language of familiar myths. The Buddhist past faded. The Persian legend took its place. That shift tells us something important. Takht-e Rostam has never had a single, fixed meaning. It has been remade again and again by the people who lived near it. Each generation read the stones through its own eyes and needs. What looks like history is often a palimpsest. Layers of interpretation pressed over one another until the oldest words are hard to read. And that leads to a puzzling thought. If a later culture could so fully replace the site's original story, might the Buddhists themselves have been building on an even older set of meanings? Could they too have arrived at the hilltop and applied their own story to a place that was already ancient and mysterious? In the end, the ruins teach us about more than architecture. They tell a human story about forgetting, inventing, and claiming meaning. Stones stay put. People do not. What lives on in a ruin is as much the story a community chooses to tell as it is whatever the first builders intended.
Is stupas, also known as chaitya. Stupas are originally reliquary mounds for the remains of the historical Buddha Shakyamuni.
Deconstructing the consensus. The official story of Takht-e Rostam is a good one. It has kings, monks, and epic poetry. It fits neatly on a timeline, but for a story to be true, its evidence must be strong, and its logic must hold. When we apply this test to the Buddhist origin theory, the entire narrative begins to crack at its foundations. The case for Takht-e Rostam being a purely Buddhist creation is built on a handful of clues that were added later, ignoring the colossal, silent elephant in the room, the structure itself. The first and most powerful argument is its shocking uniqueness. In all of Afghanistan, with its rich history of Buddhist sites, there is nothing else like it. Look across Asia, from the plains of India to the mountains of Tibet, and you will find thousands of stupas. Every single one of them is built upwards. They are acts of assembly. Takht-e Rostam is the only one that is an act of excavation. It is the black sheep, the complete outlier. This presents a devastatingly simple question. If digging a massive, sunken stupa was such a brilliant idea, whether for shade, camouflage, or any other practical reason, why did nobody, anywhere, ever copy it? In the history of architecture, successful and practical designs are repeated. Failed experiments are not. The utter isolation of this design suggests it was not a stylistic choice at all, but a necessity dictated by something we have yet to understand. Then we have the deafening silence of history, the missing inscriptions. In the ancient world, building a project of this scale was never a quiet affair. It was a statement. Kings, queens, and wealthy patrons paid for them to gain spiritual merit and eternal fame. They always announced it. They commissioned grand stone carvings, declaring to the world, "I, King so-and-so, built this magnificent place in the year such and such." Look at any other major Buddhist site from this era, and you will find these foundational plaques. It is the rule, not the exception. Yet at Takht-e Rostam there is nothing. No name, no date, no royal decree. The silence is absolutely deafening. It is the archaeological equivalent of a magnificent anonymous painting. This isn't a minor detail. It is a gaping hole in the theory, suggesting that those who added the Buddhist markings may not have been the original artists who first carved the canvas. This leads to the powerful mismatch between the effort required and the evidence left behind. The construction of Takht-e Rostam was a staggering undertaking. We are talking about the removal of thousands of tons of solid rock using hand tools, a project requiring generations of labor, incredible planning, and a massive societal effort. The scale of the work is titanic. And what did the supposed builders leave behind to mark this achievement? A few sparse, modest carvings of lotus flowers and some small meditation cells. It's like using a rocket engine to power a skateboard. The investment and the return do not match. This dramatic imbalance feels less like original construction and more like what archaeologists call adaptive reuse. It feels like a group of people finding a mind-boggling pre-existing structure and making it their own by adding a few small personal touches. They moved into the house. They didn't build it. Finally, you cannot ignore the feeling of the place. This is not a subjective notion. It's an architectural reality. Step down into the pit. The world disappears. The sky becomes a narrow circle above you. The air grows cool and still. The only sound is your own breath echoing off the high, smooth walls that surround you. This does not feel like a place designed for open worship, community gathering, or welcoming pilgrims. It feels hidden. It feels defensive. It feels like a refuge. It evokes the feeling of a fortress or a bunker. Now, compare this to any other Buddhist stupa designed to be seen for miles, to inspire awe, to draw the community in for celebration and prayer. The atmospheres could not be more different. When you piece these anomalies together, the unique design, the missing signature, the mismatched effort, and the defensive atmosphere, a clear picture emerges. The Buddhist artifacts are real, but they are a layer. They are a chapter in a much older book. They feel like a community that discovered this awe-inspiring ancient enigma and, much like the Persians would centuries later, simply applied their own faith to its mysterious walls. They sanctified what they could not explain. The question is no longer why the Buddhists were there, but what incredible thing was already there waiting for them.
Over here we can see how these choltuns were constructed. First of all, they would bore through the harder cap rock, and then once they got to this underlying softer marl, they would excavate out and make this large chamber.
The official history. Buddhists and heroes. To understand the mystery of Takht-e Rostam, we must first understand the official story. Because every good mystery needs a convincing suspect, and for centuries the case has been considered closed. The primary suspect? A group of peaceful Buddhist monks who wandered these very hills nearly 2,000 years ago. The evidence for their presence is real and tangible. If you were to walk down into the sunken pit today and examine the walls of the central stone dome and the surrounding caves, you would find clues. Faint but deliberate carvings etched into the rock, the elegant outline of a lotus flower, a symbol of purity and enlightenment in Buddhist teaching. You would see small, empty, cell-like rooms carved directly into the walls of the trench, perfectly sized for a single person to sit and meditate in silence. This was not just a solitary shrine. It was a functioning monastery, what is known in Sanskrit as a vihara, a place where a community of monks could live, pray, and study together, isolated from the world above. This didn't happen in a vacuum. The arrival of Buddhism in this part of Afghanistan was sponsored by an empire. Between the 1st and 4th centuries CE, the Kushan Empire ruled over a vast territory along the Silk Road, from Central Asia deep into northern India. The Kushan kings were great patrons of Buddhism, funding the construction of massive statues, elaborate monasteries, and countless stupas across their domain. They built a world where trade and ideas flowed freely, and where Buddhism flourished. According to mainstream history, the monks at Takht-e Rostam were part of this vibrant, expansive cultural moment. They saw this unique hilltop and decided to create their sacred site here, carving out their monastery in a style that, while unique, fits loosely within the Kushan architectural tradition. For centuries, that was the story, but then history turned a page. The engineering feat. To truly grasp the mystery of Takht-e Rostam, you must first understand the sheer, breathtaking scale of the achievement. This isn't just a building, it is an act of reverse creation. The builders didn't assemble it piece by piece. Instead, they faced a solid hilltop and asked a monumental question: what needs to be removed? Imagine the work. There were no bulldozers, no dynamite, no power tools. The tools were brutally simple: iron picks and chisels, stone hammers, wooden wedges, and baskets to carry away the rubble. The method was even more basic: incredible, sustained human effort. Workers would have likely heated the rock with fire and then doused it with water, causing it to crack before painstakingly chipping it away, handful by handful. We are talking about the removal of thousands of tons of solid bedrock. This wasn't a project that took a single season. It was a generational endeavor, consuming decades, perhaps even centuries, of labor. The organization required feeding the workers, planning the shifts, managing the debris, hints at a sophisticated and highly motivated society. This was not a casual construction project. It was an obsession carved in stone. But the awe isn't just in the amount of rock moved. It's in the stunning precision with which it was done. This is not a rough hole in the ground. From above, the trench is a near-perfect circle, hugging the base of the central dome with a consistency that speaks of advanced geometric planning. The walls are smooth and intentionally finished. The core itself is a masterwork, a massive, solid cylinder of living rock that was expertly shaped into a perfect, domed stupa form. This level of precision, achieved while carving from the top down into unforgiving stone, is a testament to an elite class of ancient engineers and surveyors. They didn't just dig, they sculpted the earth itself with the eye of an artist and the mind of a mathematician. Furthermore, the builders didn't just carve a pit. They engineered a complete system. They understood the fundamental problem of a sunken structure: water. A giant hole in the ground is a drain. To solve this, they didn't just hope for the best. They carved an ingenious rock-cut drainage system directly into the foundation, a network of channels designed to divert rainwater and protect the structure from flooding and erosion. This shows forethought and a deep understanding of hydrology. Then, consider the caves. The small chambers cut into the walls of the trench aren't just rough holes. Some were designed with small, circular openings skillfully carved straight up through the roof to the world above. These were not afterthoughts. They functioned as sophisticated skylights, allowing narrow shafts of sunlight to pierce the darkness below, creating a meditative, otherworldly atmosphere. Alternatively, if the site had a more practical origin, they would have provided crucial ventilation. This is not the work of amateurs, it is the work of visionary architects. All of this leads to one inescapable question. A project of this insane scale and sophistication does not happen without a motive that is equally powerful, compelling, and urgent. Why? What was so important that it justified this Herculean effort? A community does not spend generations of its blood and treasure on a whim. They don't choose the hardest possible way to build a holy site without a profound reason. The practical features, the drainage, the potential for ventilation, the defensive, sheltered nature of the pit, point to a purpose that was about more than prayer. It was about survival, protection, or responding to a powerful, overwhelming threat. The engineering genius on display at Takht-e Rostam is the strongest argument that the Buddhist story is incomplete. It forces us to ask not who built it, but what could have possibly motivated them. And the answer to that question may be far older and more incredible than we ever imagined. The Flood Hypothesis. We've established that Takht-e Rostam is an engineering marvel that doesn't fit its official story. But to solve a mystery, you need more than just questions. You need clues. And at Takht-e Rostam, the most compelling clues are written not in stone, but on it. They are subtle, silent marks that tell a story of a violent encounter with water. Look closely at the rock faces inside the trench and on the central stupa itself. The surface isn't sharp and angular like you'd expect from precise carving. Instead, in many places, it is strangely smooth, rounded, and flowing. It looks less like tool marks and more like the worn, soft edges of a river stone that has been smoothed over centuries by running water. These are erosion patterns, but this presents a massive problem. The climate of Samangan is, and has been for a very long time, arid. It's a place of dust and sun, receiving little rainfall each year. A geologist examining these patterns would be puzzled. The gentle, persistent drizzle of millennia in a dry climate simply could not create this kind of weathering. It is far too aggressive. This leaves only two possible explanations, both extraordinary. Either this structure is vastly older than we believe, so ancient that tens of thousands of years of minimal weathering have slowly done their work, or it was subjected to a relatively short, but incredibly violent, hydrological event. A catastrophic flood. This is where the theory takes a dramatic turn. What if we've been looking at Takht-e Rostam all wrong? What if its design isn't mystical, but brutally practical? This has led a handful of researchers to propose a radical idea. Takht-e Rostam wasn't a temple. It was a bunker. A pre-flood refuge designed to save a chosen few from a cataclysm. This is a functionalist interpretation. It means that every single strange design choice suddenly makes perfect, terrifying sense when viewed through the lens of survival. Start with the most obvious feature: the 8-meter thick walls of solid rock surrounding the central dome. In a flood scenario, these aren't just walls, they are a barrier. Calculations based on the porosity of the local sandstone suggest that if floodwaters were to engulf the pit, it would take approximately 7 to 8 days for water to slowly seep all the way through the rock to the inner chambers. This isn't a permanent seal, but it provides a critical grace period. A week of protection from the raging waters outside. Then, there's the question of air. A sealed tomb is no good to anyone. The architects planned for this. The total volume of air trapped within the central chamber and the surrounding rock-cut caves is significant. Estimates suggest that this air could have sustained a small group of people, perhaps 2 people for up to 20 days, or a family for about a week, before they would need fresh oxygen. This time frame aligns almost perfectly with the seepage rate of the water. The design offers just enough time to wait out the flood. Finally, consider its location. Takht-e Rostam isn't on a high mountain peak, but it isn't in a valley either. It sits at an elevation of roughly 1,000 above sea level, perched on the foothills. This is strategically brilliant. It is high enough to avoid all but the most unimaginably massive, continent-spanning mega-floods, exactly the kind described in countless ancient legends. Furthermore, its position on the slopes means that when the waters did eventually recede, they would drain away quickly, not leaving the inhabitants trapped in a stagnant lake. Now, to be perfectly clear, there is no smoking gun that proves a great flood inundated this specific hill in Afghanistan. No geologist has dated the erosion here to 12,000 years ago. This theory, for now, lives in the realm of compelling speculation. But sometimes, the absence of one answer makes room for another. The mainstream explanation cannot satisfactorily explain the erosion or the defensive, survival-oriented design. The flood bunker theory, while unproven, provides a startlingly logical and coherent explanation for every single anomaly the site presents. It answers the why? Why dig down? To create a fortified shelter. Why the immense effort? Because the motive was the ultimate motive, survival of your people and your knowledge. Why no inscriptions? Because the builders were fighting for their lives, not seeking glory. The architecture itself whispers of water. It stands as a monument not to death, but to the desperate, ingenious will to live. And if that whisper is true, then Takht-e Rostam may be one of the oldest and most terrifying stories ever carved into the face of the earth. Memory of a lost civilization. The theory of a pre-flood bunker in Afghanistan, Takht-e Rostam, doesn't exist in isolation. To assess its possibility, we must widen our view of human history. Northern Afghanistan has been inhabited since at least 10,000 BC, placing humans there at the end of the last ice age. A period of extreme climatic chaos marked by melting glaciers, rising seas, and catastrophic flooding. This deep history suggests our conventional timeline of civilization might be incomplete. Cultures across the globe, from the Mesopotamians to the Mayans, share a foundational myth of a great flood that wiped away a previous world. The Persian hero Rostam, a figure of gigantic size and superhuman strength, fits a universal pattern. Folklore often remembers the builders of inexplicable ancient sites as giants or gods. This is likely not a literal description, but a distorted memory of a real, sophisticated culture whose achievements seemed superhuman to later, simpler societies. Crucially, this is not evidence for alien intervention or lost super technology. The idea of ancient astronauts or laser-like tools is a modern fantasy that disrespects the ingenuity of our ancestors. The construction of Takht-e Rostam, while a staggering feat of engineering, was achieved with known tools: stone hammers, chisels, fire, water, and immense generational patience. The theory isn't about magic, it's about a lost purpose. It proposes that a forgotten culture, facing an existential threat from a changing climate, used its hard-earned knowledge of stone and survival not to create a temple, but a fortress against a cataclysm they saw coming. The bunker theory doesn't require fantasy, just a terrifying motivation and a profound skill set we have yet to fully appreciate. The burden of proof. So, where does the evidence leave us? We are faced with an utterly unique structure, a sunken, monolithic marvel of engineering, devoid of any inscription naming its creator. Its walls show erosion that whispers of a catastrophic watery event, and its entire design functions with the chilling efficiency of a survival bunker. The flood bunker theory remains unproven. Yet, the mainstream Buddhist origin theory is also weak, failing to explain the core anomalies of its design and purpose. This forces a powerful shift in the debate. The burden of proof must now move. The question is no longer, can alternative theorists prove a flood happened? The question becomes, can mainstream archaeology satisfactorily explain why this sunken, monolithic, unique, uninscribed fortress stupa was built this way in the first place? Takht-e Rostam does not stand alone in its mystery. It joins a haunting family of prehistoric anomalies that defy simple explanation. It speaks the same silent language as Göbekli Tepe, a temple complex so ancient and advanced it shattered our timeline for civilization. It shares the eerie scale of Superhenge, the lost megalithic monument whose remains lie hidden for millennia beneath the English earth. It echoes the grim, inexplicable purpose of the gigantic Aztec skull rack, a structure whose terrifying scale suggests a worldview we can scarcely comprehend. These sites are more than ruins. They are questions in stone. The Buddhists found this place and saw a sacred temple. The Persians found it and saw the throne of a hero. We look at it today and see an enigma, a puzzle that challenges not just a single historical fact, but the very narrative of human progress. It asks us the most haunting question of all. Are we seeing the full story of our past, or merely the fragments that survived?